Yo, what is up, YouTube? We're back with another one. Shout out to you guys for continuously getting these views up. Like, I'm extremely satisfied to constantly come back and see these numbers growing. So, shout out to you guys for constantly returning to the channel. You know what I'm saying? Tuning in. And yeah, we're gonna just keep this ball rolling. I know I've slowed down with my post consistency. I've been working a lot lately, like literally only having like one off day, and I've been exhausted. I'm human. Motherfucker gets tired. But with that said, we're gonna go ahead and get into this video. Today's video is gonna be us reacting to a versus battle between Magellan and Kabuto. Now, Magellan was the impaled down guard warden in One Piece that had the poison ability, and Kabuto was Orochimaru's right hand henchman in Naruto. So if you know the characters, you know their abilities, and bro's gonna sum it up pretty well and break it down. I've watched one of his videos previously when he did Gara versus Crocodile, which is what made me even want to double back and do a reaction to another video. So with that said, let's go ahead and play it, because I gotta go soon.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Today we have
Roll up while he's talking, and then we'll talk about it at the end.
Sage, Kabuto, and Magellan. As always, before we begin, I'd like to plug my Discord server, which you can join.
Or is it Magellan?
My Ko-Fi or
Maybe
my
I'm the
channel
ignorant.
member. We like to support healthy power scaling, and if you want to talk about your favorite verses or how absolutely crazy the scaling is, you may want to join. With that being said, let's talk about Kabuto versus Magellan. This is a fight that, if I had to be honest, is a lot more complex than one would initially think. I'll be splitting up the video into two parts. The first one will be Kabuto versus Magellan without Edo Tensei, and the second will be Kabuto with Edo Tensei. My reason for this is that I'd like to analyze how the battle would go if both characters fought one another one-on-one, but having a jutsu like Edo Tensei that essentially creates a small army of undead corpses has a massive impact on the result of the battle. I think that the rest of Kabuto's arsenal is extremely wide and varied, so I'd like to focus on those aspects of his toolkit first. I also think it's more interesting to see how the characters would fare in a one-on-one than simply saying Edo Tensei GG's. Let's start off by bringing up the parameters for this fight. The location shouldn't normally matter, however, I assume many would like to place these two in a cave or some kind of enclosed space like a sealed off building. Because of the nature of their individual toolkits, both Kabuto and Magellan actually benefit from this type of arena in their own ways, which I'll be going into later. A couple of things I should also probably cover are that yes, Kabuto has Genjutsu, no, it won't work. Magellan doesn't have chakra or
Why is the video buffering? Oh, I don't have time for this. I gotta go to work soon. My internet's doing that bullshit.
probably cover are that yes, Kabuto has Genjutsu, no, it won't work. Magellan doesn't have chakra or a chakra network, so it shouldn't matter. For those of you that know about Magellan's chronic diarrhea from eating poison-covered foods, I'm aware that it may have an effect in the battle, especially since he spends 10 hours a day on the toilet, and there are about 4 hours in a day where he is performing his duties, so for the sake of the video, just assume that this battle is happening within those 4 hours. As always, there won't be any verse equalization, so with all that out of the way, let's begin. After injecting himself with Orochimaru's, essence, among others, and finding Ryuchi Cave, Kabuto became a perfect sage. He grafted onto himself the DNA of multiple shinobi that were under Orochimaru's command at one point, including Kari, Jugo, Suigetsu, and the Sound 5, in order to turn himself into the perfect being. He can use a variety of their abilities, the most important of which are Karin's healing properties, Suigetsu's hydrification technique, and Jugo's passive ability to absorb nature energy, allowing him to maintain an indefinite sage mode. He also has a wide variety of nature transformations, one of which being water-style jutsu, which may be extremely relevant. In addition, his toolkit prior to all of his body modifications includes chakra scalpels that allow him to create sharp precision blades which can target the vital spots of his opponent in order to damage or sever their muscle tissue and tendons. Like Orochimaru, he can also shed his skin to either avoid damage, take his opponents by surprise, or in order to restore himself and regenerate any lost limbs. One of his most interesting jutsu is the White Extreme Attack, which creates a blinding light and deafening screech that immobilizes everyone within its range. The intense vibrations also cause pain that can be felt down to one's bones, and abilities that involve concentration become difficult to maintain. Only Kabuto can move while this attack is active thanks to his body mods and his Sage Mode. He can shut off his cornea thanks to his snake-like features, ignore the vibrations by liquefying his body, and can sense his opponent's location via Sage Mode. He also has the inorganic animation jutsu and at least 3 water style jutsu, which I will be talking about later. Moving on to Magellan, his arsenal is a lot simpler, but I do think it's just as deadly. He ate the Venom Fruit, a Paramecia devil fruit that allows him to create different types of poisons in addition to also developing an immunity to all forms of poison. From mild irritants to paralyzing agents that attack the nervous system to deadly corrosive substances, be it liquid or gas. Magellan's arsenal is extremely dangerous to anyone in his vicinity to the point that the medical bay of Impel Down has to keep multiple types of antidotes in order to counteract his poisons. However, they can only administer a cure for one type of poison at a time. A mixture of poisons becomes virtually impossible to cure, and any careless attempts to cure the mixtures can hasten the death of the victim. Magellan can form different types of constructs with his poison, the most notable of which is his Hydro, which is a massive 3-headed dragon that he can control at will. He can either spew chloroballs from his mouth that form poisonous gas in order to affect the opponent's sight and smell through irritation, and he can travel along his poison constructs using Venom Road. By covering himself in poison, Magellan becomes virtually impossible to touch without one getting said poison on themselves. Even while using second gear and only touching him for an instant, Luffy's hands became entirely coated with poison. His most powerful attack is the Venom Demon, but I'll talk about this ability later. Also, one last thing before I move on is that Magellan doesn't have Haki. I couldn't find any piece of evidence that supports him having Haki. I know it's weird for a high-ranking government official to not have it, but it is what it is. As always, the first thing I need to talk about is speed. Kabuto's speed scaling is a bit strange. In order to get a ballpark for how fast he should be, I need to talk about Sasuke's Susanoo arrow. After unaliving Danzo, he fought Kakashi and shot one of his arrows at him, which Kakashi needed to use his Kamui in order to avoid it. Kakashi's speed is a bit contentious because as a teenager he could cut a lightning bolt as it was coming down. He never portrays any speed feats or fights anyone who is stated to be verbatim light speed by the time he fights Sasuke. This is important because while I do believe he should be naturally faster than his teenage self, he also doesn't have any feats that could put him at anything above sub-relativistic. I know some people are going to bring up the Water Fang bullet jutsu that Itachi used back in part 1. There are 2 separate translations used for this jutsu, one that says it's light speed and one that says it's lightning fast. The lightning fast statement is more consistent with the overall speed meta of Naruto at this point in the story. We can also see Kakashi reacting to lightning-based attacks during his fight with Kakuzu, where he clashes with his false darkness jutsu. The characters being around this massively hypersonic to sub-relativistic tiers of speed is extremely consistent with the overall speed scaling of the verse, especially since the Raikage, who is the fastest shinobi in the world, is at best light speed if you go by the data books and you give him the benefit of the doubt. All of this is just to say that the Susanoo arrow should be anywhere between sub-relativistic to relativistic. Kabuto was capable of dodging his Susanoo arrow thanks to Sage Mode's danger sense and could keep up with and even tag Edo Itachi on multiple occasions. I know some people say Edo Itachi is lightspeed because he clashed one time with KCM Naruto, who had recently dodged the Raikage, but I don't see it that way. Their only interaction is that Itachi was falling towards Naruto, and Naruto jumped up to intercept him. The entire clash between the Edo Tensei and the Jinchuriki never shows Naruto running towards either Itachi or Nagato. The instance where he jumps also doesn't show Naruto's body flickering towards Itachi like he did with the Raikage, so I don't really see this as a lightspeed feat for him. Now, I will say that Itachi should at the very least have relativistic to possibly lightspeed reaction time, like Sasuke, since they both blocked lightspeed attacks using their Susanos. Itachi blocked Kirin and Sasuke blocked the Laser Circus Jutsu. This is important since they couldn't avoid the White Extreme attack and Kabuto was relatively slower than it while he went for Sasuke, and yet Itachi could spawn a Susanoo arm to protect his brother, which would mean Kabuto is relatively slower than the speed of light when it comes to his movement speed. In addition, through a combo attack, Sasuke was able to hit Kabuto later in their fight with a Susanoo arrow. So overall, even if I highball Kabuto's reaction time to being at the very least light speed, I can't say that his movement speed or combat speed is light speed. He's likely closer to being within the sub-relativistic to relativistic speed tiers if I had to be honest. Now, when talking about Magellan's speed scaling, I want to be clear right off the bat that he shouldn't have light speed movement speed. Luffy is unironically the perfect bridge for a vast majority of characters since his speed scaling can be consistently applied to anyone he fights. As I mentioned in my Crocodile vs. Gaara video, there are 4 points in time within the overall story where one can argue that the One Piece Lightspeed meta begins, with the latest point in the story being Sabaody Archipelago 2 arcs prior to Impel Down. Whether it's his light beam dodging feat in Sabaody or his light beam dodging feat in Marineford, Luffy should have light speed movement and reaction speed by these points in the story. As for his combat speed, it should be relative to his movement speed since he's displayed feats where his punches
Sanji,
are anything relatively faster
get out of
than
there.
his movement speed as far back
Get
as
out that
his clue,
chair.
and he's constantly capable of tagging opponents of a relative or even higher speed tier
Messing
with
up the internet.
reaction while in base. Now, during his encounter with Magellan, he is capable of dodging many of Magellan's attacks. While Magellan can keep Luffy on the back foot for a majority of the fight, especially because of his various abilities, Luffy is capable of evading most of them. He does resort to using second gear, which is a 10 times amp to his speed and power, in order to attack Magellan, but even with an attack that is 10 times faster than light, his hands still get coated by his poison. He also shows the capacity to react to Luffy's attempt at a blitz while using second gear by creating a Hydra head to block a jet pistol. This means Magellan can react to not only a combatant that is at the very least 10 times faster than light, but he can create and control his poisonous constructs at these speeds as well. This is also consistent with his fight against Ivankov, who is not only stronger than Luffy, but at least as fast as he is since they both dodged a pacifista beam that was already traveling mid-air. Ivankov even dodges multiple beams of light from Pacifista, again proving the One Piece Lightspeed meta. Magellan took down Ivankov relatively quickly, so he should be within these FTL ranges of speed, at least when it comes to his combat and reaction speed. When it comes to his movement speed, he never really seems to move that often unless he's using Venom Road, so he's definitely within a lower and essentially unquantifiable tier of movement speed. Magellan should be way faster than Kabuto, at least when it comes to his reaction speed and his combat speed. I can't say Kabuto is relative to him without just giving him every benefit of doubt and ignoring all of the light speed feats Magellan and Luffy have. Either way, speed isn't the only thing that matters in this fight. Now, finding the potential AP for both of these characters is extremely difficult. Kabuto has no good AP feats. His chakra scalpels, which are his most common tool when it comes to close combat, can slice through wood, a fake puppet of Hiruko, and Edo Itachi's body, but he doesn't have any good durability feats anyway. There's nothing I can really go off of to quantify how much damage Kabuto can do, but luckily I don't think I need to do it anyway. The chakra scalpels allow Kabuto to slash through muscle fibers and tendons, so landing these hits should still be effective, especially if Magellan isn't the type of character to move around a lot in a battlefield. In combination with his white extreme attack, Kabuto should have a consistent way of at least attacking Magellan. As for Magellan, he should be stronger than second gear Luffy, who could punch someone all the way through multiple layers of bedrock back in Alabasta 6 arcs ago. Magellan doesn't really display the best AP feats besides taking down Luffy and Ivankov relatively easily, but he doesn't really need it since he's so reliant on his poison abilities, which are also corrosive enough to melt stone with a single touch. Let's move on to round 1 because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to some very specific interactions. Kabuto is most likely going to use his white extreme attack as his opening move. While I do believe that Magellan shouldn't be capable of maintaining a Hydra during this attack's duration, he should be capable of at least coating himself with poison since it's usually the first thing he does in a fight as well. This fight is heavily dependent on how you believe certain interactions will take place. If Kabuto goes for a Chakra Scalpel slash, he'll have to make contact with Magellan. Now, the Chakra Scalpel does coat his hands, but I don't think they'll prevent the poison from getting on him since his hands do seem to still make contact with the target's body when the attack lands. The next thing I should talk about is the possible interaction between Kabuto and Magellan's poison. Kakashi stated that Sasuke should have Orochimaru's poison resistances. I couldn't find a single statement in the entire story that implied Kabuto also has these resistances, but I assume that he at the very least should. Now the key word here is resistance. Even if one wanted to argue that Kabuto has resistances to every poison in the Narutoverse, that doesn't mean he's resistant to every poison across all forms of fiction, let alone the fact that he's not immune to them. For the purposes of this video, I will agree that Kabuto should at the very least be less susceptible to Magellan's normal poison attacks, but if he's drenched in too much poison, his body shouldn't be capable of dealing with it. Especially since Magellan has a habit of mixing poisons in order to secure a kill. Resistances are not the same thing as outright immunity, so I do believe Magellan's poison should affect him, albeit at higher quantities. Now back to the fight. Depending on how you view the chakra scalpels, Kabuto will either have his hands covered in poison, or they will at least protect him from it. Even if the former were to happen, he can shed his skin so that he can avoid it from spreading to his nervous system. Another thing to note is that according to Itachi, Orochimaru's snake substitution uses up a lot of chakra. Kabuto can't constantly spam this substitution, but he shouldn't need to. One of the reasons why I said that the battlefield may be important, especially if it's an enclosed space, is because both combatants do benefit from it. Magellan can cover the entire battlefield in poisonous gas to make it difficult for Kabuto to move easily. However, Kabuto has the inorganic animation jutsu, which allows him to bring the surrounding terrain to life and use it as a weapon. The effectiveness of this ability might vary, however, because Magellan can use corrosive poisons to melt the environment, any spikes that approach him shouldn't be a problem. Since his reaction time is at the very least 10 times faster than Kabuto, dealing with the terrain may not be much of an issue, especially if it allows him to spread more and more of his poison. Now, under the assumption that Kabuto is able to hit him with stalagmites or stalactites, I'm not sure how much damage they would deal, since it was shown that they could pierce Edo Itachi, who doesn't have good durability feats, and Magellan is tough enough that he can tank hits from second gear Luffy, who 6 arcs ago could punch someone through several layers of bedrock with relatively zero damage, and he can walk away from a fight with even Cobb, who uses puncturing attacks with minimal damage. This is a fight where I genuinely believe that Kabuto has to somehow defeat Magellan without ever making physical contact. This includes using his snakes, since the poison could possibly spread to him if he's not careful. I'm aware that Kabuto is a medical ninjutsu specialist, but trying to develop antidotes mid-combat while his opponent is spreading more and more poison across the battlefield is a bit far-fetched in my opinion, especially without any necessary tools. He could use Kimimaru's Dance of the Seedling Fern to cover the battlefield grounds with bone blades, but again, considering Magellan's faster reaction speed, he might be able to melt the bones as they come out of the ground. If it wasn't for his feet blocking a Gear 2 blitz attempt, I do think this would have been a more viable option. Kabuto does have water-style jutsu. He mostly used it to counteract Itachi and Sasuke's fire-style.
That nigga got 2 bows in here.
Waterfall jutsu should be especially effective against Magellan, since he's 16 feet tall, and all sources of water should weaken a Devil Fruit user as long as it's still water. Now, if Kabuto realizes this weakness, his odds go up significantly. I do want to take the time to talk about Magellan's poison and how it would interact with water. To be honest, I have no idea. His poison never comes in contact with any water, so I can't tell you if it'll mix with the water and be worse for Kabuto, or if it'll get washed away. If you think the latter will happen, then Kabuto's odds of winning may be all but secured, since he should be capable of flooding the battlefield with a couple of uses of the giant waterfall jutsu. However, even if this were the case, I don't know how Kabuto deals with Hydra. As Magellan displayed when he was fighting second gear Luffy, he can use Hydra at a relative speed. If Kabuto were to blast Magellan with a giant waterfall jutsu, it wouldn't incapacitate him, since it isn't still water, and it likely wouldn't be enough to cover more than half of his body. Knowing that his opponent can create large sources of water would likely cause Magellan to go for the kill as soon as possible. Kabuto shouldn't have the speed or reaction time to avoid Hydra, especially if Magellan is taking no risks whatsoever. Considering the large mass of poison that the Hydra is constructed from, I do think that if Kabuto gets hit by it, he may not be able to withstand the paralyzing effect or the pain it causes to the nervous system. He may be able to shed his skin in order to evade the effects, but I'm not exactly sure if it would be fast enough to avoid it from infecting his nervous system. Even if he tries to substitute, Magellan should be fast enough to send another head in whatever direction he chooses to escape. If Magellan chooses to use his Venom Demon, then the fight may be over for Kabuto, especially if he touches him, since the Venom Demon's poison spreads through everything it
Nigga, I'm
touches, including
recording.
the ground itself. If this poison touches him and spreads through his entire body, he will die. Attempting to counter it through the inorganic animation jutsu would only result in a larger portion of the battlefield being covered in said poison. He even states that this poison can destroy all of Impel down. As far as this round goes, I do think that Magellan can achieve his win conditions much easier than Kabuto. While I do believe Kabuto does stand a good chance if he can end the fight quickly, especially if he figures out that water style is extremely effective in at least weakening him, the speed difference, at least when it comes to Magellan's Hydra, makes me side with him more often than not, simply because Kabuto can at best damage his muscles and tendons in order to restrict his movements, which can be counteracted by Venom Road anyway. However, he'd have to make physical contact to an extent, and prolonged exposure could be his downfall. If he can land a hit direct on Magellan's chest, he can likely cause induced arrhythmia by tearing his heart's muscles, but because of the massive speed difference, Magellan can just block the attack with a Hydra. In which case, I think his best and most consistent option for winning is performing the white extreme attack and going straight for Magellan's heart. On the other hand, Magellan just needs to coat Kabuto with enough poison that his body can't recover from it, and Hydra should make this win condition relatively easy and consistently. Now moving on to round 2, Edo Tensei GG's. Look, I could probably go on for another 5 to 10 minutes in order to make an in-depth analysis about how Magellan might pull off a win, but it doesn't matter. The Edo Tensei should be immune to poison. It's a small army of undead zombies that, even if most of them are like walking snails in Magellan's perspective, they should eventually overwhelm him since they have virtually infinite stamina. I'm not sure if he could take them down with his corrosive poison without them regenerating, but either way, it would only be a matter of time before Kabuto uses Itachi to seal away Magellan with the Totsuka blade. The lack of observation haki makes it an extremely plausible scenario. I could also talk about Madara, a possible Nagato soul steal, but none of it matters. Magellan would have to immediately go for the kill, and I don't think in character he would. What I really mean is, he would have to blitz Kabuto instantly with Hydra before the Edo Tensei are summoned. Even if he kills Kabuto after they're summoned, the Edo Tensei wouldn't go away, so it would still end up as a double knockout. You would essentially have to believe Magellan would go for the kill before Kabuto attempts to summon a single coffin. In my honest opinion, this fight is extremely interesting. There's a ton of interactions that, depending on how you view them, could change the result. I didn't talk about every possible scenario since I would be here all day, but I did cover the points that I believe are most important. With all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Alright, boom. So, with everything he said, I agree. I have no contention towards anything that he stated, especially when it comes to the Edo Tensei portion of the fight. There would just be no way Magellan would be able to handle being overwhelmed in that way. And like he said, Itachi, Totsuka Blade, GG's. Pain, Almighty Push, or Planetary Devastation, GG's. So, or the Soul Stealing ability. So it's really a matter of just overwhelming him. And with Kabuto's arsenal, that's more than possible. So we get a dub to Kabuto overall. Originally, I was leaning more towards Magellan, only because I'm a One Piece stan. But after hearing the facts, it's like I can't really argue anything to go for him in regards to winning. Just again because of Kabuto's like pool, his bag is too deep. And that would be a problem for Magellan at the start, at the finish, in the middle, whatever. Like, having all the sound ninja 4 abilities, Orochimaru's abilities, Sugetsu's abilities, Jugo's abilities, Karin's abilities. That's a broken move pool on top of his own. Yeah, that's a L for Magellan. So, but that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Catch you on the next one. Peace.